Every so often, somebody asks me how I research when I'm working on a novel. And the answer I usually give them is defensively. What do snacking, Instagram, and research have in common? They're all excellent distractions from writing, if you're me at least. In this video, I'm going to share with you how I research and what I mean by defensively. Let's go. Okay, research is tricky. When it comes to creating a fictional world with which you are not familiar, you need to do it well enough that you aren't feeling your way through the dark. You also want to do a decent job researching, and not just for the sake of the story, because it's the responsible thing to do, right? Lack of adequate research can lead to relying on stereotypes and misunderstandings, which can do damage beyond the pages of your book. And that's really a writer's worst nightmare, I think, at least for me. But also, research so easily becomes a tool of procrastination, a rabbit hole. The most important thing when it comes to writing a first draft is writing it. I can't tell you how many people have told me I have stacks of research material, or I've been researching this book for months or for years even, but they haven't actually started writing yet. Here's the thing, I know that I'm gonna ditch a lot of what I write in the first draft. It's just what happens. So purely in terms of time well spent, it doesn't make sense to devote hours to studying up on the background of a minor character or a setting in one scene when I might wind up cutting that scene. So let's get into the nitty-gritty of how I approach research in my writing, depending on the stage of writing or revision. And that is that I use a hierarchy approach. For each drafting stage, I approach revision differently. Okay, for draft one, my approach is minimum viable research. You may have heard the term minimum viable product, or MVP. It's a term that's used in the business world. It means that before a company invests a whole bunch of resources into putting bells and whistles on a product, they make the minimal version, the minimum viable version, and get that in front of customers so that they can learn from the customers who are interacting with it what they like, what they want, how the product is working. Just get what is functional out there and then learn from how people are interacting with it. I stole this term, minimum viable, from the business world to use it in novel writing because I realized this is exactly how I approach research on a first draft. For the first draft, I try to do the minimal amount of research for the story to form. The goal, remember, as I said a moment ago, is to get the draft done, just to get the shape of it on paper. All right, so this is gonna mean I have some placeholders, things that I'm gonna fill in later in future drafts, things in brackets, just blank lines. It's important to note here that the word minimal does not necessarily mean little. I'm gonna say that again. Minimal does not necessarily mean little, as in little research. Minimal means however much is needed. If a certain thread of research is essential to how the story develops or the world in which the story is set, minimal can actually mean quite a lot of research, right? If your story is set in 1700s Ireland and you know nothing about 1700s Ireland, minimal is gonna mean a lot of research. But if you just have one Irish character coming to dinner in one scene, a scene that may not even make it through the first round of revision, maybe you don't need to read an entire book on Irish dialects to write your first draft, right? In other words, depending on how you're going to be using that research, minimal can mean 30 seconds, or even 0 seconds, just putting a placeholder for now, for a bit of research that doesn't determine the actual trajectory of the narrative, or it can mean quite a lot, and that call is gonna be up to you. What I love so much about this standard is its flexibility. Okay, now what do I do when I get to the second draft? With draft 2, I do more research to fill in those placeholders I've left for myself on the first draft. I'm revisiting parts that I've marked as, to come later, and connecting dots between major sections of the story or within chapters. Note here, as I'm talking, that as I'm moving through drafts, scenes are sticking around, means it's more likely that they're going to stay to the end. And this is why we're doing more and deeper research as the stages of drafting progress. Make sense? Okay, before I get into how I approach revision on the third draft, A quick invitation. I have a free private group for writers working on books where once a month I host a live event where I plan out the first third of a new novel from scratch. It's super fun. It's like improv meets novel writing, and you'll learn by watching and participating. You can join this event, 30,000 words in 30 minutes, watch Mary plan the first third of a novel from scratch at the link below this video. Okay, now back to the video, third draft research. For draft 3 and beyond, my approach is the deep dive. So this is the deepest level of research. I dive in as needed to ensure accuracy, because at this point, the content that still exists has survived a few rounds of culling. And that means it's pretty likely to stay, or at least to be read by people at some point. You know, literary agents you're querying, or fellow writers if you're in a writing community. Just to reiterate, the idea here overall isn't to be stingy with your research. It's to be strategic about it. To do the deepest research when it's likely to be the most useful and not a waste of your time or a procrastination technique. Taking an approach of minimum viable research on the first draft will keep it from becoming a creative cul-de-sac where you're just circling, round and around in a corner when what you want to be doing is progressing forward. And in general, I often call to mind this quote from Jonathan Franzen that's stuck with me. He says, "When information becomes free and universally accessible, voluminous research for a novel is devalued along with it." Thought that was really interesting and really speaks to writing books in the age of the internet. Doing a ton of research for your book won't prove that you're a good writer. Writing a good story will. If you've made it this far in the video, I'm guessing that you're writing a book or want to write a book. And if so, I have something for you. A few years ago, I created the 4 notebooks method. It's my process for handwriting a novel across 4 notebooks. This is a strategy to map out your story structure in a way that doesn't lock you into an outline or suck all the freedom and fun out of the writing process. If you'd like to learn the method and get a free digital template for writing your novel across 4 notebooks, just go to the link below this video. To get the template, you just have to apply for my program, the Book Incubator. It's only 2 questions, takes under 5 minutes, and you'll get the template right away, whether you join or not. There's no pressure to enroll. I'm excited to hear from you.